The rain hammered the terracotta roof of the old finca like 1,000 accusations, drowning out the distant crash of waves against Galicia's jagged coast. Adeline's heart slammed against her ribs as she gripped the edge of the scarred oak table, her knuckles white, the words she'd rehearsed for months now clawing their way up her throat like thorns. "Mom, I'm gay," she blurted, the confession exploding into the dim kitchen like a gunshot, shattering the fragile peace they'd clung to since Dad's ashes were scattered into the Bay of Biscay 2 years ago. Esme froze mid-stir of the caldo gallego simmering on the stove, her wooden spoon hovering like a guillotine blade, steam curling up to veil the lines of exhaustion etched into her face. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until Esme's spoon clattered into the pot, splattering broth across the tiles. "Gay," she whispered, not in horror, but in a voice cracked open like the earth after a storm, raw wondering as if Adeline had just unlocked a door Esme had bolted shut decades ago. And in that instant, as tears carved silent paths down both their cheeks, Adeline knew. This wasn't the end of their world. It was the unraveling of a lie that had bound them tighter than love ever could. Adeline had always chased the horizon, ever since she was a girl with scraped knees and dreams too big for their cramped Boston row house. At 16, she'd begged her parents to let her spend summers with her abuela in this forgotten corner of Spain, western Galicia, where the Atlantic winds whipped the eucalyptus trees into frenzied dances and the air smelled of salt and pine. Esme had relented, packing Adeline off with a duffel bag and a warning. "Don't let the sea steal your heart, mihija. It never gives back what it takes." But Esme's own heart had been pilfered long before, by a woman whose name she never spoke, buried under layers of marriage vows and motherhood's relentless tide. Now at 22, Adeline had returned not as a visitor, but as a fugitive. College in Massachusetts had been a pressure cooker of late-night cram sessions and fleeting hookups that left her hollow, until Sophia. Sophia, with her laugh like church bells and hands that mapped Adeline's skin like uncharted coasts. They'd met at a dive bar in Cambridge, Sophia slinging craft beers, Adeline nursing a pint and a bruised ego from another failed exam. One stolen kiss in the alley behind the bar, and Adeline was lost. But Sophia wanted more. A life untethered, a road trip across the states, no strings, no settling. Adeline, terrified of the void, had clung too tight, and Sophia had slipped away like fog at dawn, leaving behind a post-it note. "You're too good for cages, Addie. Fly." Devastated, Adeline fled to the one place that felt like sanctuary. The finca her abuela had left her in the will, a crumbling stone farmhouse perched on cliffs near Fisterra, the end of the world. Esme had followed, selling the Boston house after Richard's cancer claimed him, trading suburbia for this wild exile. Mother and daughter, adrift together, piecing together a rhythm of sea-worn days. Mornings foraging for percebes on the rocks, afternoons tending the overgrown vegetable patch, evenings with Esme's guitar strumming flamenco-tinged folk tunes by the fire. It was fragile, this peace. Adeline dodging questions about her friend Sophia, Esme deflecting probes into her own shadowed past. But the rain that night, relentless as Adeline's secrets, had forced the dam to break. Esme turned from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron, the fabric faded floral from some long-ago market in A Coruña. Her eyes, the same stormy green as Adeline's, searched her daughter's face. Not with judgment, but with a mirror's unflinching gaze. "Sit," she said softly, pulling out a chair. Adeline collapsed into it, the wood creaking like old bones. The caldo bubbled forgotten, its aroma of cabbage and chorizo filling the room, a comforting ghost of normalcy. "Tell me," Esme urged, sinking into the opposite seat. Her voice was steady, but Adeline caught the tremor, the way her fingers twisted the hem of her sleeve. A telltale sign from childhood, when Esme would soothe nightmares with stories of brave sailors and hidden treasures. Adeline swallowed, the words tumbling out in a rush. Sophia's wild curls, the way she traced constellations on Adeline's palm under starlit skies. The terror of labels, the shame whispered in hallways and preached from pulpits back home. "I thought you'd hate me," Adeline admitted, voice breaking. "Dad. He was so traditional. And after he died, I didn't want to burden you. But I can't hide anymore, Mom. It's eating me alive." Esme reached across the table, her hand enveloping Adeline's, callous from years of nursing shifts and now from wrestling olive branches into submission. "Burden?" she echoed, a bitter laugh escaping. Oh, mi amor, if you only knew the weights I've carried. She paused, glancing toward the rain-lashed window, where lightning forked over the Black Sea. Your father was a good man, Addie. Steady as the tide. But he wasn't my first love. Or my truest. Adeline's breath hitched. Esme had never spoken of her youth, only vague tales of growing up in a sleepy suburb outside Philly, meeting Richard at a diner where she waitressed through nursing school. What do you mean? Esme's gaze drifted to a faded photo on the mantel, her and Richard on their wedding day, young and beaming, Adeline a bump beneath the lace. But beside it, tucked almost out of sight, was another. A snapshot of two women in their 20s, arms linked on a windswept beach, laughter frozen in black and white. Her name was Clara, Esme said finally, the name slipping out like a sigh. We met in '78, at a protest in DCRA rallies, gay rights marches. She had this fire, red hair like autumn leaves, eyes that could unravel you with a glance. We were everything. Shared a walk-up in DuPont Circle. Dreamed of a world that wouldn't stone us for loving. Adeline leaned forward, pulse thundering. This was her mother? The woman who'd baked apple pies for PTA meetings and volunteered at church soup kitchens. The one who'd cried silently at Richard's bedside? What happened? Fear, Esme said simply, her voice a threadbare whisper. AIDS was ravaging our friends. Reagan's America turned a blind eye, and suddenly being out wasn't liberation, it was a target. Clara wanted to fight louder, chain ourselves to the White House gates. I wanted safety. A family. When she left for San Francisco, I let her go. Met your dad 6 months later. Buried Clara in a box marked old friend, and never looked back. She squeezed Adeline's hand tighter. But I looked every day. In your eyes, in the way you chase storms. I saw her in you, Addie. And I was terrified you'd pay for my cowardice. Tears blurred Adeline's vision as the pieces slotted into place. The late-night journals Esme burned after Richard's death. The way she'd linger at the Finca's library, poring over yellowed queer history tomes. You never said anything. All these years. How could I? Esme's laugh was hollow, echoing off the stone walls. I built this life on silence. Taught you to be strong but never showed you how to be free. When Richard got sick, I promised myself, if we made it through, I'd tell you. But he didn't, and the promise died with him. She stood abruptly, crossing to the mantel, lifting the old photo with reverent fingers. This is us, Addie. Not broken. Just bent by the wind. The rain eased to a patter as Adeline rose, wrapping her arms around Esme from behind. Mother and daughter stood there, swaying like kelp in the current, the weight of unspoken truths lifting just enough to breathe. But in the quiet, Adeline felt a new undercurrent. A pull toward the cliffs, toward the life she'd glimpsed with Sophia, now refracted through her mother's hidden map. Little did she know, Esme's confession was only the first wave. The undertow of betrayal waited offshore, ready to drag them under. Days blurred into a tentative thaw. Adeline woke to Esme's humming in the kitchen. Not the mournful laments of old but brighter melodies. Joni Mitchell covers with a Spanish lilt. They walked the coastal paths together, boots squelching in mud, sharing stories Esme had hoarded like sea glass. Clara's laugh during candlelit vigils, the thrill of stolen weekends in Rehoboth Beach. Adeline opened up about Sophia. The electric spark of their first dance at a queer open mic, the ache of her leaving. She said I was holding her back, Adeline confessed one fog-shrouded morning, as they gathered driftwood for the hearth. Like I'm afraid of the drop. Esme nodded, stacking branches with practiced ease. Fear's a clever thief, steals your compass. But look at this place, Fistera. The Romans thought it was the world's edge, but sailors proved them wrong. We keep going mihija. One horizon at a time. Emboldened, Adeline reached out to old friends, dipping a toe into Galicia's quiet queer scene. A cafe in Santiago de Compostela run by a collective of artists, where rainbow flags fluttered like defiant prayers. She met Lucia there, a local potter in her late 20s with clay-flecked hands and a smile that warmed like aged Rioja. Lucia's studio was a sunlit haven overlooking the Ria, shelves groaning under vibrant ceramics, mugs shaped like crashing waves, plates etched with lovers' silhouettes. Their first conversation stretched hours, from Goya's dark canvases to the ache of small-town closets. You're American? Lucia asked, her English accented with the soft roll of Galician vowels, as she shaped a vase on her wheel. Boston-born, Spain-bred in summers, Adeline replied, watching the clay spin into form under Lucia's steady palms. Running from a breakup, chasing something. Lucia wiped her brow, leaving a smudge of terracotta. We all chase here. The Celts called this land the edge of longing. Stay long enough and it shapes you. She invited Adeline to a cumbia workshop that night. A swirl of hips and laughter in a dimly lit hall, where women partnered with women without a second glance. Adeline felt the rhythm seep into her bones, Lucia's hand light on her waist, guiding without claiming. It was tentative, this spark, not Sophia's wildfire, but a steady hearth glow. Esme noticed the shift, the way Adeline returned from Santiago with flushed cheeks and tales of new friends. One evening, as they shared paella under the pergola, saffron rice studded with mussels from the tide pools, Esme set down her fork. This Lucia. She makes you light up, like the lighthouses at Cape Finisterre. Adeline blushed, spearing a shrimp. It's early, Mom. But yeah. She sees me, you know? Not the mess I left behind. Esme's eyes softened, but a shadow flickered, regret or warning. Just promise me. Love fierce but guard your heart. The sea's beautiful, but it drowns the unwary. Adeline laughed it off, but the words lingered like salt on skin. Unbeknownst to her, Esme had her own ghost stirring. In the attic trunk, amid Richard's old letters and Adeline's baby shoes, lay a bundle of Clara's correspondence, faded envelopes postmarked from San Francisco, words of enduring love Esme had never answered. With Adeline's coming out, the past clawed free, demanding reckoning. Late one night, as thunder rumbled offshore, Esme penned a letter to a mutual friend from those DC days. Do you know where Clara is? I need to make amends before it's too late. Weeks unfurled like fern fronds after rain, and Adeline's world bloomed in hues of terracotta and sea glass. Lucia became a constant. Mornings in the studio where Adeline learned to coax shapes from clay, her fingers clumsy but eager under Lucia's patient touch. Feel the give, Lucia murmured, her breath warm against Adeline's ear as they wedged the lumpish earth. It's like trust. Push too hard it cracks, too soft it slumps. Afternoons wandered the mercado in Lucia, haggling over figs and manchego. Evenings on the beach with picnics of empanadas and stolen glances that deepened into lingering kisses, salt-tanged and sweet. Lucia was woven from the land itself, born in a fishing village nearby. Her family generations deep in the rhythms of net mending and tide reading. She spoke of her own path with quiet defiance, coming out at 17 to a father who mended boats and a mother who wove kelp into baskets, their acceptance hard-won through tear-streaked nights and pilgrim prayers. They say Galicia's green but the hearts here are stone, Lucia said one twilight, as they traced the Camino's ancient stones toward the lighthouse. But stones erode. Love's the sea that does it. Adeline soaked it in, this unapologetic grace. With Lucia, she wasn't the prodigal daughter or the heartbroken expat. She was simply Addie, alive in the now. Text to Sophia went unanswered, a one-sided elegy she finally deleted. Esme watched from afar, her smiles genuine but laced with an undercurrent Adeline couldn't name. A restlessness, like a gull pacing before a gale. One crisp October morning, as goldenrod carpeted the cliffs, Esme announced a pilgrimage. To Santiago, she declared over café con leche, her eyes bright with uncharacteristic fervor. The full Camino from Fisterra back to the cathedral. For clarity, Addie. For us. Adeline hesitated. Lucia had a kiln firing that week, and the 100-kilometer trek was no lark. Blisters and burdens the pilgrim's yoke. But Esme's plea tugged at the fresh bond between them. It's not just steps. It's stories. Let me walk yours with you. They set out at dawn, backpacks slung with chorizo and crusty bread, scallop shells tied to their packs like talismans. The path wound through eucalyptus groves, their leaves crunching underfoot, releasing a menthol-sharp scent that cleared the mind. Esme moved with surprising vigor, her linen trousers mud-splashed, silver hair escaping its braid to frame a face unlined by pretense. They talked in fits and starts, Adeline of Lucia's dreams to exhibit in Madrid, Esme of Clara's unpublished poetry, verses that haunted her like half-remembered songs. By the third day, as they crested a hill overlooking the Rias misty fjords, the conversation turned raw. I envy you, Esme admitted, pausing to catch her breath, sweat beading on her brow. This Lucia. She's your Clara, isn't she? Fresh, unscarred. You get to build without the ruins. Adeline kicked a pebble into the underbrush, watching it skitter. It's not without ruins, Mom. Sophia left scars. And Dad. His illness, the way it hollowed us out. But Lucia makes me want to rebuild anyway. Esme nodded, but her silence stretched. Heavy as the pilgrim's staff she leaned on. That night, in an albergue echoing with snores and the patter of fellow walkers, Esme pulled a dog-eared journal from her pack. Read this, she whispered, pressing it into Adeline's hands. The pages were Esme's, entries from '82, ink faded but fervent, descriptions of Clara's touch like velvet thunder, laments for a love smothered in the name of survival. Adeline read by headlamp light, tears spotting the paper, until Esme's voice cut through. I betrayed her, Addie. Not by leaving but by erasing. If I could go back. You can't, Adeline said gently, closing the book. But you can forgive yourself. Here now. With me. Esme's nod was small, but the next morning she walked taller, humming an old Joan Baez tune. They reached Santiago on the 7th day. The cathedral's spires piercing a sky bruised with clouds. Kneeling before the Botafumero's empty swing, they lit candles, Adeline for courage, Esme for absolution. Compostela certificates in hand, they shared pulpo a fira in a plaza alive with buskers, laughter bubbling freer than the fountain nearby. Back at the finca, Lucia waited with a feast. Percebe steamed in seaweed, her eyes lighting at Adeline's sun-kissed return. Esme embraced her, fierce and unreserved. Take care of her heart, she murmured. It's rarer than Galician gold. As autumn deepened, the trio wove a fragile tapestry. Lucia joined Sunday suppers, her pottery gracing the table, bowls that held the steam of fabada like captured dreams. Esme shared guitar lessons, her fingers guiding Lucia's over chords of diamonds and rust. Adeline felt the edges of her world soften. Love no longer a solo voyage but a shared deck. Yet whispers of discord stirred. A letter arrived for Esme, postmarked San Francisco, its seal unbroken on the mantel. Adeline glimpsed the return address, Clara Navarro, and felt a chill, not of jealousy but foreboding. November brought gales that rattled the shutters, and with them, Esme's unraveling. She grew distant, poring over maps of the U.S. coast, her journal filling with frantic scrawls. Adeline confronted her one stormy eve, as wind howled like banshees. That letter, it's from her, isn't it? Clara. Esme's face crumpled, the envelope clutched like a grenade. She's dying, Addie. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Our friend found me through old networks. She wants to see me one last time. Before the end. Adeline's stomach nodded. Go then. Make it right. But Esme shook her head, tears fierce. And leave you? This life we've just begun to claim? No. I've run from love too long. But flying across the ocean, it feels like abandoning you all over again. The argument simmered, unresolved, until Lucia intervened with quiet wisdom. Love isn't a zero-sum, Esme. Go. We'll hold the fort. Adeline and I were anchors now. Esme relented, booking a flight for December, her packing a ritual of ghosts. Clara's old locket, Richard's wedding band on a chain. At the airport in Santiago, Adeline hugged her tight, inhaling the scent of lavender soap and resolve. Come back to us, she whispered. With peace. Esme's flight lifted into a slate sky, and Adeline turned to Lucia, their homecoming a tangle of limbs and reassurances on the finca's worn rug. But as they lay entwined, listening to the sea's roar, Adeline couldn't shake the echo of Esme's parting words. If I don't return the same, forgive me, mi hija. Some truths demand everything. Across the Atlantic, Esme landed in a San Francisco fog-shrouded with memory. Clara's bungalow in the Castro was a time capsule. Rainbow flags faded to pastels, bookshelves sagging under Audre Lorde and Adrienne Rich. Clara herself was a wisp, cheeks hollowed, red hair thin to silver threads, but her eyes still that piercing hazel, alive with the fire Esme remembered. You came, Clara rasped, from a wicker chair by the bay window, an oxygen tank humming softly beside her. Esme knelt, taking her hand, frail but the grip fierce. I had to. For the girl I left behind. For the woman I became. They talked through the night, words a bomb and blade. Regrets over untouched poems, the AIDS quilt panel Clara had sewn for lost friends. The life Esme built on half-truths. You chose safety, Clara said, not accusing but factual as tide charts. I chose the storm. We both survived, Esme. That's victory enough. By dawn, as gulls wheeled over the Golden Gate, Esme felt the knot in her chest loosen. But Clara's request came like a rogue wave. Take my ashes back to Galicia. Scatter them where the Celts whispered to the sea. And tell your daughter, love doesn't betray. It redeems. Esme promised, tears salting the plea. She stayed 2 weeks, nursing through chemo haze, reading aloud from their shared journals. When Clara slipped away on a crisp solstice morning, Esme held her, whispering, I see you. Always. The funeral was a quiet affair. Queer elders in leather vests and linen shawls, toasting with shots of mezcal to a life unbowed. Esme boarded the plane with Clara's urn in her carry-on, a weight both crushing and cathartic. Adeline's days without Esme stretched like low tide, exposing the barnacle-crusted truths beneath. The finca felt vast, its rooms echoing with absence, but Lucia filled the voids with her steady presence. Clay-spattered mornings turning to evenings of shared silence, hands intertwined over mugs of liquor cafe. They drove the winding roads to Cabo Fisterra, parking the battered Renault amid tour buses, to watch the sun dip into the Atlantic, painting the horizon in fire. Your mother's storm will pass, Lucia said one such dusk, her head on Adeline's shoulder, wind tugging at their scarves. Galicia teaches patience. The waves always return reshaped. Adeline nodded, but doubt gnawed. Esme's emails were sparse. Clara's stories heal old wounds. Home soon. No details, no photos, just a digital breadcrumb trail. Adeline threw herself into work, volunteering at the local women's shelter and sea, teaching English to immigrant fishers' wives, their accents a babble of Portuguese and Moroccan French. It grounded her, this service, the way a shared cup of thé con limon could mend a frayed afternoon. Lucia joined, her pottery classes for the kids a riot of color, tiny hands shaping worry dolls from scraps. Yet nights brought dreams. Esme adrift on a raft of regrets, Clara's ghost beckoning from foggy shores. Adeline woke sweating, Lucia's arms a lifeline pulling her back. Talk to me, Lucia urged, tracing the freckles on Adeline's collarbone like a braille of comfort. It's fear, Adeline confessed, voice muffled against the pillow. That mom's found someone, that pulls her away for good. Like Sophia did to me. Lucia propped on an elbow, her dark eyes solemn in the moonlight slanting through the shutters. Or maybe she's finding herself so she can give more to you. Love's not a tide that ebbs, it rises. Christmas approached on gales that stripped the olive trees bare, and Adeline decorated the finca with Lucia's help. Holly reeked from cliffs, candles in ceramic holders flickering like hopeful stars. They baked roscon de reyes, the anise-scented cake rising in the aga oven, a ritual Esme had taught Adeline as a child. For the wise ones who followed the star, Esme would say, hiding the tiny figurine for luck. Now Adeline hid it herself, whispering a prayer for her mother's safe return. Esme arrived on Noche Buena, taxi crunching gravel at dusk, her coat dusted with airport snow. Adeline rushed out, enfolding her in a hug that smelled of jet fuel and jasmine. Clara's perfume, perhaps? Esme pulled back, eyes rimmed red but luminous. I'm here, she said simply, pressing a small wooden box into Adeline's palm. For both of us. Inside was Clara's locket, engraved with Siempre, always, and a folded note in spidery script. Tell your daughter. The heart's map redraws itself. Follow the stars, not the shadows. Adeline's throat tightened as Esme recounted the vigil's end, the urn now buried beneath the finca's oldest eucalyptus, roots drinking in the last of Clara's fire. Lucia, sensing the gravity, had prepared a feast. Laken con grello steaming beside a Yule log of almond turin. They ate by firelight, Esme's tales weaving through the meal like smoke. Clara's final poem, recited from memory, about lovers as lighthouses guiding through fog. She forgave me, Esme said, voice steady for the first time. Said I didn't betray her. I honored her by living. By raising you. Adeline raised her glass, tears glinting. To redemptions. And to family, the ones we choose. The new year dawned crisp, and with it the first fracture. A package arrived from Boston. Richard's old law partner, shipping files from the estate sale. Amid tax forms and deeds lay a letter, yellowed and sealed with wax. From Esme to Richard, dated 85, the year Adeline was born. Curiosity overrode caution. Adeline slid it open while Esme hiked with Lucia, the words leaping like accusations. "My dearest Richard," it began, "I marry you today not from passion's blaze, but from the hearth's quiet glow. Clara sails away tomorrow, her heart a vessel I cannot board. Forgive me this half-life. I carry her shadow but vow to light our home with truth's best light, for the child we may one day hold." Adeline's hands shook. Half-life. Esme had known of Clara's departure before the wedding, chosen Richard knowing her heart lingered elsewhere. Betrayal not just of Clara but of Richard, of the family facade. When Esme returned, flushed from the cliff walk, Adeline thrust the letter forward. "You lied. To Dad. To us. This wasn't survival. It was selfishness." Esme paled, sinking onto the settee, the room's air thickening like pre-storm hush. "Addie, no. It was love, messy, human. I loved your father truly. But Clara was my youth's thunder. I couldn't drag him into that storm. You dragged us all." Adeline's voice cracked, years of unspoken resentment surging. "Pretending perfection while hiding your pain. I came out to you thinking we'd share truths, but you fed me half-stories. What else, Mom? What other ghosts?" Lucia hovered in the doorway, torn between intervention and retreat, but Esme waved her in. "Stay. This is your family now." The three sat in brittle circle, Esme's confession unspooling like frayed rope. The letter was a safety valve, written to unburden before vows. Richard had never seen it, but Esme's guilt had shadowed their marriage. The late-night sobs she mistook for grief, the way she'd push Richard away during intimacy, blaming fatigue. "Cancer revealed it all," Esme admitted, gaze on the fire. "He knew in the end. Forgave me on his deathbed." "Live true as," he said. "For Addie." Adeline recoiled, the betrayal sting mingling with pity. "And me? I idolized that perfect marriage. It made my own fears feel small." Esme reached out, but Adeline flinched. "Your fears were never small. I amplified them by my silence. Forgive me, Mihija, or don't. But know this. Every lullaby, every scraped knee kissed was real. Love isn't pure. It's persistent." Lucia bridged the gap, her hand on Adeline's knee. "We're all half-written, Amor. The betrayal's in the hiding, not the hurting." They talked till midnight, voices raw, the letter burning in the grate. A pyre for illusions. Dawn found them spent but stitched closer, the finca's walls bearing witness to fractures mended with tentative thread. Spring crept in on greening gales, and Adeline's anger ebbed into understanding. She and Lucia deepened their bond, planning a summer exhibit in A Coruña. Adeline's photos of the coast paired with Lucia's ceramics, a dialogue of light and earth. Esme threw herself into the garden, planting lavender for Clara's memory, her hands in soil a therapy of rebirth. But the true tempest brewed in subtle signs. Esme's lingering glances at a Castro Bars postcard, her guitar now tuned to queer anthems from the 80s. Whispers from the village, old expat friends emailing about a reunion in Lisbon, a pan-European queer elders retreat. Adeline ignored the unease, focusing on joy. A proposal from Lucia, not ring-bound but vow-sealed, whispered during a solstice bonfire. "Build with me, Addie. Not against the waves but with them." They celebrated with Esme, toasting under stars that wheeled like blessings. Yet as summer peaked, Esme's restlessness crested. "I'm going to Lisbon," she announced over breakfast, her tone light but eyes evasive. "Just a week. Old friends from the marches, Clara's circle." Adeline's fork paused midair. Friends? Or unfinished business? Esme's laugh was forced. "Both perhaps. But I'll return. Promise." The airport farewell was an echo of December's. Hugs tight, words waited. Adeline drove home with Lucia, the road blurring through tears. "She's chasing her own horizon," Lucia soothed. "Let her." But letters arrived in Esme's absence. From a woman named Marta, a Portuguese activist with ink-stained fingers and a laugh Esme described in postcards as wine-rich. "Marta remembers the 81 demo in Lisbon," one read. "We danced till dawn, plotting revolutions." Adeline's stomach twisted, not jealousy but the echo of Esme's warning. "Guard your heart." Then the call came on a sweltering August night, as Adeline and Lucia packed for the exhibit. Esme's voice breathless over the line. Addie, I've met someone. Marta. It's like waking from a long sleep. I need time to see if this is real. The phone slipped from Adeline's grip, clattering like a dropped anchor. Betrayal sharp as a nor'easter. Esme, who championed her coming out, now fleeing to a new love, leaving wreckage in her wake. Come home, Adeline pleaded, voice fracturing. We need you. I love you, Esme whispered. But love me enough to let me live. The line went dead and Adeline shattered. Sobs racking her as Lucia held her through the night, the sea outside raging in sympathy. The betrayal hollowed Adeline like a nor'wester scouring the cliffs, leaving her raw and exposed. Days bled into a fog. The exhibit in a Coruña, a mechanical whirl of handshakes and flashbulbs, Lucia's ceramics glowing under gallery lights while Adeline's photos, intimate captures of crashing waves and intertwined hands, hung like accusations of fragility. Critics praised the visceral dialogue of resilience, but Adeline heard only Esme's absence, a silent critique. Lucia anchored her, their shared bed a refuge of whispered affirmations. She's not gone, amor. Just wandering. Like you once did. Village life pressed on, indifferent to personal tempests. Adeline threw herself into the shelter, organizing a mural project, women and children daubing the walls with visions of safe harbors, colors blooming from pain. It was cathartic, this creation from chaos, mirroring her own tentative mending. Letters from Esme arrived weekly. Vignettes of Lisbon's trams clanging through Alfama alleys, Marta's stories of 70s underground presses printing manifestos in the dark. She's steady, Addie, like Richard, but with fire. We talk of histories, not just heartaches. I miss the finca's salt air, your laugh. Soon stretched to September, then October, as gales returned with vindictive fury. Adeline's replies grew clipped, laced with pleas. Lucia's pregnant, did I tell you? Early days, but we're over the moon. Come for the scan. Be grandma. It was true. A quiet joy amid the storm, confirmed after a village clinic visit, Lucia's hand trembling over the grainy printout. They dreamed of tiny feet pattering on stone floors, a family expanding like the Rias at high tide. Esme's response was a ticket stub, Lisbon to Santiago, dated November 1st. Coming home, the note read. With bells on and apologies unbound. Adeline's relief warred with wariness. She and Lucia prepared the finca. Nursery sketches on the walls, a bassinet carved from driftwood. Esme arrived at twilight, taxi lights cutting the mist, her arms laden with gifts. Tiny espadrilles from Portuguese markets, a silver rattle etched with waves. But her eyes, when she hugged Adeline, held a new gravity tempered by distance. Marta sends her love, Esme said, voice light. Hopes to visit someday. The word visit landed like a stone in still water. Over caldo that night. Rich with turnips and Adeline's secret hope for reconciliation. Esme unburdened. Lisbon had been a revelation. Reunions with March veterans, their scars badges of survival. Marta, a widow twice over, with a vineyard near the Douro and a laugh that echoed Clara's. We didn't plan it, Esme confessed, stirring her bowl absently. But after 40 years in the shadows, Addie, it's like breathing after drowning. Adeline's spoon clattered. And us? Lucia, the baby, you're shadows now. Esme's face fell, the warmth leaching away. Never. You're my son. But Marta. She seized the woman I buried. I won't abandon you, I couldn't. But I need this too. Weekends in Portugal, perhaps. A bridge, not a break. Lucia's hand found Adeline's under the table, a silent vote of grace. Bridges hold weight, she said softly. Build it strong. The weeks that followed were a tightrope. Esme's visits to Lisbon, returning with Douro port and tales of river cruises, her guitar now duetting with Marta's violin over video calls. Adeline's pregnancy swelled, a curve of miracle under her shirts, ultrasounds revealing a girl, Esmeralda. They named her, for the sea's green depths. Esme doted. Prenatal yoga in the garden, knitting booties with yarn dyed from local herbs. But the undercurrent pulled. Adeline catching Esme's gaze lingering on the horizon, phone buzzing with Portuguese endearments. Climax crashed on a December solstice, winds howling like furies as they gathered for Esmeralda's blessing. A simple rite at the cliffside chapel, local women circling with candles and chants. Esme had come straight from the airport, scarf knotted with Doru grapes, her presence a bomb. But as the priestess invoked ancestors, Celtic mothers and Roman sirens, Adeline felt a shift. Esme's hand slipping from hers, phone vibrating insistent. "Answer it," Adeline urged, post-right as they descended the path, Lucia ahead with the elders. Esme did, her face draining to ash. "Marta. Accident. Car on the ice, Doru road slick. She's gone, Addie. Just gone." The world tilted. Esme collapsed against a boulder, sobs tearing free, raw animal grief that echoed the sea's roar. Adeline knelt, holding her as the rains came, mingling tears with downpour. "I'm sorry," Adeline whispered, the irony bitter. Betrayal's blade turned inward. Esme's fresh love snatched like a wave's theft. They buried Marta in spring, a transatlantic pilgrimage. Adeline, heavy with child, and Lucia flying to Oporto, Esme a ghost in black linen. The vineyard ceremony was intimate, workers toasting with their best reds, Marta's sister reciting eulogies in lilting Portuguese. Esme scattered petals into the river, her voice breaking. "You gave me flight, Marta. Now anchor me home." Back in Galicia, the birth came fierce and fast. Labor under April stars, Lucia's hand vice-tight, Esme coaching breaths like old nursing days. Esmeralda emerged wailing, slick as a seal pup, her cry piercing the night. Esme held her first, tears tracing the infant's downy cheek. "She's you, Addie," fierce eyes, fighter's grip. In the quiet after, as Lucia slept and Esmeralda nursed, Adeline and Esme sat vigil on the porch, bundled against the chill. "I almost lost you to that bridge," Adeline said, voice soft. "But losing Marta, it brought you back." Esme nodded, rocking the bundled babe. "Betrayals teach me, Hija. Mine to Clara, to Richard, echoes in my flight to Marta. But love's the constant. It bends, breaks, but reforms. Like this land, storms carve the coast, but it endures, greener for the gouge." Adeline leaned into her shoulder, the weight of years lifting like mist at dawn. Esme stayed, her Lisbon weekends traded for grandbaby mornings, Marta's vineyard willed to a queer youth collective, Esme's stewardship a monthly pilgrimage of purpose. They built from the ruins. Family suppers with Lucia's kin, storytelling circles where Esme read Clara's poems to Esmeralda's gurgles, Adeline's photos now chronicling not just horizons but hearths. Years later, on a summer's eve much like that rainy confession night, Adeline watched Esme teach Esmeralda to skip stones at the tide's edge, 2 generations flinging hopes into the foam. Lucia joined, her arm around Adeline's waist, their second child a kick of promise within. The sea whispered approval and Adeline knew. The changes weren't endings but evolutions. In the dance of betrayals and redemptions they'd found not perfection, but profound humanity. A love as vast and varied as the Atlantic, forever reshaping the shore.